Another strange and fascinating experience happened on my last trip to Russia, which was 5 or 6 years ago, and I spent 3 or 4 months there. And I was told to do a documentary on the country and go wherever I wanted to on an unlimited expense account. So I picked my itinerary, and it took me almost 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get permission to go to the places and make the arrangements, and I finally got started. I was under the direction and help of the Russian Press Bureau, which is called Novosti. And I had nothing to do with Intours, the Russian Travel Bureau. And so Novosti arranged that for Russian journalists to go with me, Russian journalists who spoke English. And they felt that I would have more freedom that way, because of course the in-tourist interpreters are given the party line and that's it. So it was a fantastic experience. I had 3 different Russian interpreters, 2 beautiful people, and 1 was sort of the scum of the earth. The times that I had with the 2 nice interpreters and journalists were some of the best times of my life. The other experience was not to be believed. He was a young, pimply-faced writer who spoke fluent English, but I never felt really understood English when it was spoken to him. We had great long conversations, and I never knew whether he was pumping me or what his interest was. And as we went along, over the weeks I felt a coolness developing, and we got down in the Black Sea area, and I wanted to travel around the Black Sea, and we did, and I stopped at a little town, not a resort town, but just a plain little town, full of beautiful old homes, magnificent old houses. The interpreter did not want me to photograph the houses because he said, it is bad. They are old houses. We're not proud of them. But I argued with him. I said, they're magnificent. I like them so much better, aesthetically, artistically, than the new buildings. I want to photograph them. That's why tourists would come here. He said, you will not photograph them. I said, I certainly will. He said, you will be arrested. I said, well, that remains to be seen. So I went ahead and took my pictures, and he suddenly disappeared. And about 20 minutes later, I noticed that at each end of the street there were policemen standing and watching me. The policemen got closer and closer. And then I noticed that the people around started to get uptight. And you could just feel the vibrations. Wow. And so I took off from the street and went down to the seashore. And of course I saw nothing wrong with photographing the seashore, and they didn't either. And so the policeman sort of disappeared, and the tourist showed up. The interpreter showed up and said, I told you that it would be bad to photograph those things I told you not to. And I said, I see nothing wrong in photographing these things, and I will continue to do as I want. He said, you will not. So we got in a great battle of words, which had never happened, and he no longer would interpret for me. So we went along for days, and he wouldn't speak to me. We'd go in a restaurant, and I couldn't even order. I couldn't read Russian, so I'd have to go back in the kitchen and point to the pots. So I'd take the lids off the pots and point to the things that I wanted. And of course, if in doubt, there was always borscht, which was a great vegetable soup with all the leftovers from the past day in it. And I got along, but things were really getting bad. And things were tightening up. I didn't know what to do. So I tried to put a call in to a colleague of mine in Moscow. There were about 6 or 8 book writers and photographers in Russia at the time. I could not get the call in because I couldn't speak Russian, and the operators couldn't speak English. But suddenly it occurred to me, I will send a telegram. And the telegram got through and was delivered. And it was to a man who was a music critic for a book magazine, a chap named Joseph Roddy. And the telegram read, "Joe, I'm in much trouble. Contact me immediately." And he did. I explained what had happened. And I said, "Get a hold of our man at Novosti, the press bureau, and tell him the hell I'm going through, and see what you can do to remedy the situation." Another day went by, nothing happened. Another day came. My interpreter suddenly appeared, and he said, "We are leaving now. We have 15 minutes to leave." I had no idea where we were going. So I packed in 15 minutes all of my camera gear and was down in the taxi, and the taxi I thought was going to the airport. Well, the taxi went out into the suburbs. And the interpreter was sitting in the back, wouldn't speak to me. And all of a sudden we stopped at a street corner, and another man got in the cab. And they started yelling at each other in the back seat. I turned around and I said, "For God's sake, speak English so I can understand." They paid no attention to me. This yelling went on. We went to the airport. My old interpreter said, "Philip," he said, "you have a new interpreter." And I said, "Thank God." And by that time the fellow introduced himself. But then a very strange thing happened. We got to the boarding ramp of the airplane. There are people who are obviously members of the secret police standing around. The captain of the plane was standing. I didn't know who spoke English. And my old interpreter said to me, "Phil," he said, "I want to go back to New York with you." Well, of course, I was on my guard as soon as he said that. And I said, "Why?" He said, "I have all the captions for the photographs, and you need the caption material." He said, "Only I have the caption material." And he said, in a rather loud voice, "Also, I want to escape from Russia." And I looked around, and the other people were looking rather blasé. I'm sure they could have heard. And I said to him, I said, "You are the world's biggest son of a bitch." I said, "You have caused me nothing but trouble, and now you want to escape from the country that you were born in. You should be ashamed of yourself." And I said, "I hope I never see you again, and I wish you nothing but bad luck." What had happened, of course, is that he wanted me to say yes.
And then that would get you in trouble.
And that would get me in a hell of a lot of trouble, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here now. But I said exactly the right thing, and he disappeared. The new interpreter was great, and about 6 or 8 months later, the representative from Novosti that had been my contact man, a very powerful man in the Novosti, the Russian press bureau, came to New York, and he looked me up. We got together, and he had dinner at my home. And during the dinner party, he apologized to me. He said, "Phil, I knew you were having difficulties, but," he said, "even in our country we had red tape, and I apologize for not making the change and helping you any sooner than I did." And I said, "How did you know that I was having trouble?" He said, "I knew every day what was going on."